require safety testing for genetically modified organisms. According to the FDA's statement of policy, quote, ultimately, it is the food producer who is responsible for assuring safety, unquote. While Monsanto was quoted in the New York Times Magazine as saying, quote, our interest is in selling as much of it as possible. Assuring its safety is the FDA's job, unquote. There is a lack of accountability as to who is ultimately responsible for the safety of genetically altered foods. According to Monsanto's website, there is no need for or value in testing the safety of genetically modified foods in humans. So long as the introduced protein is determined safe, food from GM crops determined to be substantially equivalent to their non-GMO counterpart is not expected to pose any health risks. Apparently their thinking goes like this: if GMO corn looks like corn and tastes like corn, then it probably won't hurt you, therefore we see no reason for testing. In 1999, a group of scientists wrote a letter titled Beyond Substantial Equivalence to the prestigious journal Nature, in which they called substantial equivalence a pseudoscientific concept that is inherently anti-scientific because it was created primarily to provide an excuse for not requiring biochemical or toxicological testing. In 1999, a group of scientists this concept of substantial equivalence and the lack of independent long-term testing on something as integral to our health as the food that we eat is particularly alarming. It is deceptive for Monsanto to claim that their genetically altered seeds are basically identical to the non-GMO counterparts in order to forego rigorous testing, while at the same time claiming that the genetic alteration is unique and as such warrants a patent from the US Patent Office. It cannot be both unique and substantially equivalent at the same time. In addition, how can a corn plant be considered substantially equivalent if it contains Bt toxin in every single one of its cells? And it's regulated by the EPA as an insecticide. The food itself is considered an insecticide. According to a Canadian study done by toxicologists and obstetricians, Bt insecticidal proteins were found in the blood of 93% of pregnant women and 80% of their fetuses. To illustrate the absurdity of the term substantial equivalence as it relates to engineered products and personal health and safety, I'm reminded of a case that took place in the 1970s. This involved the introduction of a product to the marketplace that was substantially equivalent to millions of other products that American consumers purchased and used daily. The manufacturer had engineered a product that looked like and performed the same function as the other existing products. Like the other products, it was understood by consumers to be safe. However, during testing, it was shown to be extremely dangerous, and in the end, proved to be life-threatening. When the flaw was brought to the manufacturer's attention, they conducted a very methodical cost-benefit analysis, putting dollar amounts on a redesign, potential lawsuits, and even assigned a dollar value to people's lives, and determined that it would be cheaper to pay off lawsuits than to make a repair. This case describes a phenomenon known as ethical fading, detailing how ethics oftentimes take a backseat to profits. The product was the Ford Pinto. It was substantially equivalent in every regard to other automobiles on the market except for one thing. When involved in a rear-end collision, the gas tank would rupture and the car would explode, injuring or killing its passengers. Substantial equivalence does not provide consumer protection. Yet the biotech industry uses substantial equivalence as justification to avoid long-term epidemiological studies and does so at the risk of our public health and the health of our environment. So with the biotech industries such as Monsanto, Bayer, BASF, Dow Chemical, DuPont, and Syngenta policing themselves, many people have a reasonable skepticism of the safety of genetically engineered foods, especially when Monsanto, whose crops account for 91% of the total area of GMO crops planted worldwide, has in the past been involved with the production of chemicals such as PCBs, DDT, dioxins, and the defoliant chemical weapon Agent Orange. This class of chemicals is so toxic that they were banned in the 1970s but still pollute the environment today. Think about it. Many of the products Monsanto created or introduced are now banned because of their enormous health risks, yet our government officials once declared every one of them perfectly safe. In an example of blatantly misleading consumers, Monsanto released advertisements in New York for its Roundup herbicide. used with its Roundup Ready genetically engineered corn, claiming that it biodegrades into naturally occurring elements, will not wash or leach into the soil, and that it can be used where kids and pets will play. Not my kids. The company also claimed that the main ingredient in Roundup, glyphosate, is less toxic to rats than table salt, and is practically non-toxic. The ads were brought to the New York Attorney General, and all of the claims were found to be false or misleading. Recent independent studies have linked glyphosate to a number of health ailments that include cancer, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, birth defects, and more. And yet the Grocery Manufacturers Association has stated that they intend to petition the FDA to issue a regulation that would allow food containing GMOs to be labeled natural. This is the ultimate deception, as the vast majority of GMOs could not possibly occur naturally. Connecticut passed legislation that would make it illegal to use the word natural on any packaging of any food product containing a biotech ingredient.